This next week, your TV screen and social media feeds will be filled with plenty of news from the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. In a historic move, Democrats are set to officially nominate Vice President Kamala Harris as their presidential nominee. I caught up with Grant Tennille, chairman of the Democratic Party of Arkansas, to get his take on this past month's whirlwind frenzy of political action. Joining me now, Grant Tennille. He is the chairman of the Arkansas Democrats, the Democratic Party of Arkansas. Grant, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Roby.
Sorry we couldn't do this in person. I know you got to jump on an airplane and head to Chicago for a big convention next week. Let's talk about what will you be doing at that convention next week? Because Arkansas does not have the prominent role it had back in the 90s, but what will the delegation be doing?
Well, although I do have to disagree with you, it's certainly not quite the prominent position that it had in the 90s. But Arkansas still swings a fairly large bat in the Democratic Party. And people like Lottie Shackelford make sure that we are always in focus and up front. And that's what we'll be doing in this next week, is showing up in Chicago ready to make a lot of noise for Harris Walz. People are more excited about this than anything I've seen in a long, long time. I'm from Arkansas, so it's really difficult for me to say anything like this out loud, so I will caveat it 9 different ways. They were excited in 92 and 96 and 16. These folks are really, really excited as well.
All right, we'll see if that translates down ballot for you. But let's stay with the top of the ticket. This phenomenon of the last few weeks with President Joe Biden exiting the race, Vice President Kamala Harris very quickly coalescing the support to do that. A lot of good pub. You've seen a lot of the polling that has been coming out, particularly this last week, and I'll point to the Cook Political Report that shows quite a bit of competitiveness in the swing states that are in play. To me, when I look at this, the Democratic base has returned. The enthusiasm for the Democratic base has returned. Is that what you're seeing? Or are you seeing something else more subtle?
Well, I think there's that. And there are people who are now emerging who had no intention of voting for Trump or Biden. And they're new. And that's changing the models in every state. I think Frank Luntz said it best the other day when he said he hasn't seen anything like this in his 30 years as a pollster. And the most interesting one that I saw that he said was that he was unable to fulfill a contract for a major television network because they wanted him to poll undecideds under 27, and he couldn't find a single woman.
Okay. Well, I think one of the things that you're alluding to there, I think they've been called double haters. They hated voting for Biden, they hated voting for Trump, and now they have someone that they at least feel like they can look at and potentially vote for in Kamala Harris. There, is that kind of the subgroup that you're talking about?
I think absolutely, but I also think that Governor Walz is a huge addition to this ticket. I think that people all over America are looking at these two and saying, this is an America that we recognize. These are people of various backgrounds coming together to work hard to make life better for everybody. That's what our idea of the United States is, and what our idea of the United States government is, and they're delivering.
One of the key groups that will be important, particularly in those swing states, are independent voters. It is hard for me to imagine that after all of these years, we still have voters that stick their finger in the wind and try to figure out which way they're going to go, but they are out there. How is Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, how is she going to distinguish herself from Trump with those independent voters? What do you think her message is going to be?
I think her message is going to be plain and serious talk about the direction that the United States is headed in and her ideas for how to make it better. I think what they're getting from President Trump increasingly is just MAGA craziness, and trying everything that they can possibly do to inflame the culture wars, to drive their people to the polls. And I think Americans are finally running out of patience with it.
So do you think this is a base election? Do you think this is Democrats have to get more Democrats to the polls, Republicans have to get more Republicans to the polls, or do you think that there is something more persuasive in those voting blocs?
I think we're seeing something more persuasive materializing over the last 2 or 3 weeks, that there are even Republicans now coming out and saying, I can't go with the 1860s ticket. I need to go with the future of America.
Kamala Harris has talked about grocery price gouging is going to be something that'll be central to one of her economic policies. She has co-opted or adopted the Trump no tax on tips. I would just say that those two things combined are not a real robust economic policy. What do you think Kamala Harris is going to do for the economy?
I think we're going to continue to see quite a bit of the Biden Harris economic package continue into the future. It's about better wages for working Americans. It's about putting unions back in the position where they have been in the past that have strengthened this economy in this country. I think it's about recognizing that strapping future generations with mountains of educational debt is a terrible idea for the future of our economy. And I think those are exactly the kinds of things you'll see the Biden-Harris ticket pursue.
Is illegal immigration Kamala Harris's Achilles heel?
I don't know that it's an Achilles heel. I think there's a ton of misunderstanding and misinformation going on, and that it's going to be up to her and Governor Walz to try and clear the air and to get Americans recognizing the problems that we face and that there are solutions, but that we have to pursue them honestly.
Well, Senator Tom Cotton has warned us on Twitter this week that that caravan is coming to the southern border again. It seems to show up every election cycle, right about 2 or 3 months before election day. That caravan makes its run for the border, and then I don't hear about it. I do hear about immigration issues, and I do see the concerns that are out there, but the caravan itself seems to materialize every other election.
That is correct. And again, many of the people in the supposed caravans are coming here to work for companies that we know well. And they're here searching for a better life, which was the story of America from its founding. There are solutions to this problem. We just have to get honest.
All right, I reserve the right to pull you back on the show when we have some polling that is out in Arkansas, as well as post-convention when some of this messaging shapes up a little bit more in terms of what direction Vice President Harris wants to take the country and how former President Trump chooses to message in opposition to that. Promise me you'll come back.
I always will come back.
All right, Grant Tennille with the Democratic Party of Arkansas. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Roby.